Muchas gracias a mi colega congresista Soto. Okay, forgive me now. Now I'd like to recognize my colleague and friend, Congressman Jared Moskowitz, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I want to thank my colleagues, Dan Kilday and Robin Kelly, for being here, as well as Leader Jeffries. Welcome to Broward County, the only county that voted Democrat in the last election, at least in South Florida. At least in South Florida. That's what I meant, in South Florida. I meant in the South Florida region. Okay. So a couple quick observations. First is with what the Supreme Court. Well, first, thank you to the witnesses for being here, and thank you for sharing your stories. But one of the things that I find fascinating, but also very telling of the Florida Supreme Court, is that the 3 newest justices, the 3 newest people onto the court, 3 women appointed by the governor, all voted for the 6-week abortion ban, but then voted against letting the voters decide. So they voted to negate what voters in 1980 did. Okay, they said those voters were wrong, and then wanted to deny today's voters the ability to weigh in. And that's not just telling on this issue, it's telling for where the Supreme Court is going. That the Florida Supreme Court now has a tilt to the right, a more extremist view with the 3 newest people in a 4-3 decision. That's how close the decision was to allow voters to decide. So obviously we're stuck in this moment, but also the concern about where this court is going should another justice retire and the governor get another appointment. So I think that bears notice. It also bears notice that those justices are also on the ballot for retainment. So if the voters also want to show their displeasure to those justices for their vote, they could also weigh in November. I miss the days where my Republicans were for small government. It's amazing how they want government everywhere. And look, the last couple years here, we've had culture wars in Florida, and the culture wars have failed. They failed. They did not achieve the objective that they tried to achieve, but they've hurt a tremendous amount of Floridians in the process. Ms. Dorbert, I found your story very compelling, obviously, and tragic. Did your medical professionals tell you to get on a JetBlue flight and fly to New York?
My OB talked to me about it when she realized her hands were tied. She asked, what I thought about going out of state. From her standpoint, she said it'd be very costly. And she's like, she could not promise me there would be any legal repercussions. Yeah. And so that's kind of what she had told me and advised.
Right. And same thing, family, friends, all weighing whether you should literally get on a plane and leave the state where you live to go to another state to receive health care within the same country.
I mean, they all weighed in about going, but I had to think about my 4-year-old son at the time. How long would I be away from him? I've never left him more than a couple of nights. And obviously, whether healthcare was going to cover it, because right now I'm having a hard time healthcare covering just treatment now to help me. And so, and then finding a doctor in another state to do it safely.
Yeah. What did you, when your doctor sat you down and said, by the way, if you want this level of health care, my recommendation to you is possibly to get on a plane and go to another state. What did you think at that moment?
I was really shocked because I think I was still in a shock state once I found out he had Potters, and then I found out I had to carry the full term, and then she told me, there's the option of going out of state. She didn't advise it, but she just told me it's costly. She didn't know what the repercussions is, but if it was something I wanted, she would help. But she also said if I stayed here, that she would take good care of me to the best of her ability.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming today and telling your story.
Thank you, Congressman Moskowitz. Gentleman yields back. And now I yield to my colleague and friend, Congressman Maxwell Frost. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for being here, and thank you so much to my colleagues who flew from out of town to be here in the beautiful state of Florida, especially Leader Jeffries. Thank you for being here. You know, oftentimes we see leaders co-opt certain language and for political purposes, language or movements or culture. We see it all the time. I mean, one I like to point to is how the right wing has acts like they own Christianity and acts like they own the Bible. You know, I was raised Southern Baptist, and so I can't say enough of how frustrating it's been to see folks weaponize my religion and my faith to push a restrictive right-wing agenda. And not only do we see it with Christianity and religion in general, but we also see it with fundamental American beliefs and values. I want to do something real quick. I'm going to read 3 quotes. I'm not going to say who they're from. And I'd like y'all to tell me whether you think it's a friend or foe of freedom and liberty or of the abortion access movement. So here's one. Quote, "We have to understand that the threats to freedom are not simply a result of what happens in legislatures. You got to fight to win." What do you think, friend or foe? Friend? Okay. It's Governor Ron DeSantis. Let me do another one. Quote, "In America, we believe in the majesty of freedom and the dignity of the individual." Friend or foe? Foe? Oh, you're catching on. That's former President Donald J. Trump. The dignity of the individual. Here's my last one. Quote, "We can either have a free society or we can have a biomedical security state. People are going to be free to choose and make their own decisions for themselves and their families." Friend or foe? Foe? Another Ron DeSantis quote. See, right-wing leaders in this state love to preach freedom, liberty, patriotism, and then they never back it up with action. So there's a lot of talk about freedom there from 2 prominent Floridians, right-wing Floridians. Ms. Dorbert, in the moments where you were with your doctor here in the state of Florida, and you were receiving the information that you got, did you feel that freedom?
No,
Did you feel that liberty?
no,
If we go back 5, 6 years ago, did you ever think something like this would be possible in this country or in this state? What happened to you?
no,
Why?
because I felt free.
You know, not only do they co-opt freedom and patriotism and liberty, but they also co-opt other things as well. Ms. Timaraju, you are an organizer. You've been doing this work for a long time. Do you hate adoption?
Do I get
Do
adoption?
you hate adoption?
My children are adopted.
Oh, your children are adopted.
Yeah, actually,
Well, because
I
those on
suffered
the
from
right wing would make us.
endometriosis.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I suffered from endometriosis and I adopted my children.
Well, folks would have us believe that people like you and I hate adoption. I'm adopted
That's right.
myself. And I despise the fact that my identity and my story, and same thing with yours, is used by the right wing to try to restrict people's rights. Why do you think the right wing uses adoption a lot of times to help push this anti-freedom agenda?
Well, it fits into their, theological power and control, goals. But I'll say one thing, and I think you'll appreciate this about adoption. Before I adopted my children, I spoke to many adult adoptees. I wanted to understand their perspective on reproductive freedom and on abortion access because I knew what I did. Across the board, every single adult adoptee I said, I wish my birth parents had the freedom to decide. Across the board. Adoptees have been co-opted by this movement. The adoption narrative has been co-opted. Adoption is traumatic. It is not the silver bullet solution, despite what Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett asserted in the Dobbs discourse. It is not a solution to a lack of abortion access.
Thank you so much. You know, yes. I never knew my biological parents my whole life. I connected with my biological mother a few months before deciding to run for office, so just about 2.5 years ago. And when I was talking to her about the story and why she made the decision she made and what was sacred about it, what I got from that conversation is what was sacred about it wasn't just about the decision that she made, but about the fact that she got to make it. And so freedom, liberty, and patriotism isn't just about bald eagle, beer, and flag. It's about the people who live in the country. And so we'll continue to fight for bodily autonomy for all people here in the state of Florida and across the country. Thank you so much to our witnesses.